as well as cable headends and things like that, goes as far as IP. That being said, I'd like to introduce Doug Mountain. There he is, the man, the one, the only. He's done well over 25 years of Grammys audio. He's now with Paramount Plus, doing a lot of what's it? Studios. There you go. You're right. Doing restoration. He's going to talk a bit about some of the tools and on the restoration side, both Pro Tools and Isotope RX. So I will hand it off to him, and he will share some of the tools and interesting things that's happening in audio and restoration.
Okay, so most of my work is in audio restoration for feature films from the back catalog. They come in a few basic flavors, optical, magnetic film, multi-track, and the digital formats, or what I like to call the gray years, where sync was maybe. A little bit of history and background on optical was pretty much how most films were released for about 40 years. But prior to that, it was done with a synchronous turntable that was attached to the projector itself. It was chain driven off the main motor on the projector. And those records played from the inside to the out. And that was still an active distribution format all the way up into the 50s. When magnetic film became a thing post-World War II, after they figured out how to actually do biasing correctly, we started to get synchronous magnetic film. Eventually we got into a lot of multi-track formats, dragging along 24 tracks and 16 tracks, and eventually that got us to the digital formats, the 8-track dubbers, and eventually fully digital workflows with file-based all the way through, okay? So, used to be mixed by three people in a big dubbing stage. You had one guy mixing dialogue, somebody else mixing music, and somebody else mixing effect. It's a very manual process. They spent a lot of time rehearsing a reel before they actually recorded it. To create, in the end, a composite mix. Usually they recorded their separate stems separately, and then they did a second pass where they would mix those stems together into a monocomposite and making some minor changes at that point as well. When we got into the, after kind of mono, and we moved into the stereo formats and then eventually LCRS. But we had some multi-track formats early on, starting in the 50s. We had some LCR stuff on some of the wide format releases. Eventually we got the Todd AO format, which was 5 behind the screen and mono surrounds overhead. That then led to format 42 and 43, which was essentially 3 behind the screen. And the 2 surround channels were derived from the left extra and the right extra channels. And those were actually panned to the rear. So you had unique left surround, right surround, and then the low frequency channels were derived from those channels pumped into the subs up front. So you actually had 6 channels, right? So as we moved forward into that, eventually as we got further into, there were a few big milestones, Star Wars being one of them. It was one of the first big multi-channel releases of a tentpole. And then we eventually as we got into the digital world, and we started getting workstations incorporated into the workflow in the 80s, we started to get more tracks, things got wider, and then eventually automation came in on the consoles, and we went from 3 mixers down to 2, and in some cases now just 1. The problem that we've had on a lot of these older mixes of all the varying channel formats is, the studio wants to re-release a lot of these titles, but the problem is they're not in great condition, right? Optical is kind of a limited dynamic range signal. It started to roll off on the low end with the Academy filter, which was put into the playback of all the theaters. It would roll off at about 100 hertz down the low end. There'd be nothing below 100 hertz. The high end, there was nothing below or above 7K. And it started to roll off in the Academy filtered around 2K. It was a very slow slope down, which helped to kind of just make the dialogue work intelligible without a lot of the noise that was associated with the optical process or the magnetic film process before we had noise reduction, okay? So that kind of created a problem. The problem was, it's not how people remembered the movie, you know? So when we put it up and we start to listen to these now and we open up and we can see what was above and below those points in these optical tracks, like, oh, there's music down there, the basses and the cellos are down there below 100 hertz. We should probably open those up and have a listen to them. So we could increase the dynamic range. Because there's an interesting phenomenon that goes along with people watching movies that they've seen before. Like the first time you see a movie, it kind of breaks down into this. Dialogue is telling you the story, the actors are telling you the story in the dialogue. The music is there to tell you how to feel about that story. It tells you what the emotional temperature is and how you're supposed to feel about what's happening. The effects are sort of like the layer that tells you where you are and what's going on. It's the staging, right? It tells you the environment, it tells you sound effects, tell you, accentuate these important points like gunshots and all that stuff. And then that all kind of bundles down into a composite mix, right? The problem we have now is when you listen to that stuff, it's full of pops, it's full of ticks, it's full of noise, it's full of dropouts, it's full of all kinds of problems, right? So the phenomenon is that when you listen to a movie the second or third time or something that you heard and you know the story, your brain starts to wander. And it's like, oh, I don't remember all that noise, or you start bumping on all the picture cuts where you can feel the production dialogue shifting in the production ambience, right? And so now what we do is the working mantra is we try and restore it to as people remember it. Okay, so we want to fix a lot of that stuff. We want to take out the pops and ticks. We want to, without destroying the rest of the overall balance and sonic integrity of the recording. We want to be able to even out a lot of those gaps, right? We want to be able to fill those little divot holes that are left by very bad dialogue editors back in the day, right? So we come to a few tools that we're going to use now, or that we use now, which is Pro Tools is sort of the main driving DAW workstation, right? Isotope RX is a companion program that sits with it, but also is embedded in it in certain points. So each of the modules, so RX is like having a really good Craftsman tool set from the 80s when Sears still owned it, right? And you could get the socket set with all the different sizes, and both standard and metric, and you had everything you needed, right? And you had all the right screwdrivers and all the right wrenches, right? That's what Isotope RX. It's a set of tools that are used for very specific purposes as we run into, and we'll look over some of those problems. Then there are newer plugins coming down the road. There's older ones. Some really good stuff has been happening with AI in the plugin world, right? We're able to resynthesize dialogue now. We're able to completely separate and isolate out dialogue and music effects now from a composite mix. So we're going to look at some of that today, right? So Isotope RX, as many of you have seen it before, we're going to look at the screen on the left, which is where we've taken a composite mix and we've turned it into separate dialogue and music and effects stems. We've unmixed it. And we can do that now because of AI, right? So this was a composite mix. The top layer is dialogue, music, and then effects, and we can break it down even more. This is our new dialogue isolate tool that they have just completely rewritten as well. And most of this was created by taking known pieces of good dialogue, feeding it into AI, and then taking really bad dialogue and feeding it into AI, and basically telling the program, make this really crappy dialogue sound like this really good dialogue, right? So we're able to do that. And then the AI had learned the characteristics of the human voice, and it doesn't matter the language, the voice still works the same, right? So these are the types of issues that we run into: hums, buzzes, noise, clicks, pops, ticks. Then we'll kind of talk about how we can separate some of that stuff out, how we repair it, and then we have some synthesis. one of the ways that we've made some huge changes moving forward is audio random access. So the manufacturer's Avid has allowed people to essentially talk directly or script directly into their program, right? So we can now embed portions or actually drive commands right into the engine, right? And we can also then open up that. And then we have some other tools to automate that. One is from SoundFlow. It's a subscription-based service, but it's basically a tactile interface using the Stream Deck. And then we go through and we write our own little buttons to speed up the process, right? So rather than just going through and clicking menus and pulling things down, we just put it on a button, right? Pretty fast. Then there's the Yukon interfaces, which you can buy as many faders as you need, depending on what you need it for. You can have a small setup, with a dock, with motion control and, monitoring control, and then you can have, banks of 8 faders with little touch screens on them for all your metering, and it's all pretty reasonably priced, okay? What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna have a quick look at Pro Tools. So this was an old movie that I had, it's in public domain. It's one of the old Sherlock Holmes movies. But I'm gonna play a little bit of it here. And we're gonna hit a problem here in a minute. Hear the pops and ticks, right? But then it's gonna drop, it just goes away, okay? So what we wanna do is, first I'm gonna send that over to the editor, just put a little button, right? And we can see the hole that's there, and I wanna repair the hole. So the simplest way I can do that is just to select that area and then up the gain on it, right? To kind of restore that section, right? The whole thing's also full of a lot of pops and ticks, so I'm just gonna go ahead and de-tick it. So all these modules here are all on this list on the right, and we're basically looking at these little modules that you can open up, and if you see mine at home, it's kind of crazy. There's about 20 modules open at all times, right? Monitors are cheap. You just keep spreading it out. But declick is usually the kind of thing that we will run on something like this, and we'll set it for like a mid sensitivity, and we'll process it, and it's gonna go through and it's just gonna remove the ticks, right? So now we've removed the ticks. We've got a little divot here we still wanna fix. We probably wanna gain that up a little bit. And by the way, I have a little soft feathering thing here, this tool down here. This allows me, and here's the setting of it, I can determine between the frequency and the time left to right, frequency top to bottom, how much I want to blur what I'm doing. So it's soft edging like in Paintbox or Photoshop, right? It's kind of a handy little tool. But it helps us. So I wanted to just maybe put a little more gain on that section right there, that was probably too much, but no, it's probably okay, okay? So now once I've done this and fixed this in the editor, I can send it back to Pro Tools, and we're gonna render it back into place. So now we're gonna hit that spot where we had that low spot missing, and it doesn't drop out anymore. Okay. And there's other things we can do once we had that. If we wanted to go through and we could have isolated out all these crickets here, right? If we wanted to hear just more crickets, that's kind of easy. We just would surround the crickets. And if we wanted to remove them, we could use a tool like spectral repair and just say horizontally and vertically, I want you to, at this many bands, I want you to just remove all that stuff. So now the crickets are gone. You don't like birds? We can take out your birds. You don't like crickets? They're gone. Cicadas are the tricky ones though. But these are the kind of tools that RX has within it. Now, a lot of these tools that we're working in the editor, and we're sending from Pro Tools into the editor, and then we're round tripping it back once we've done it. So we can do a more fine selection of the frequency ranges and areas we want to adjust, right? So this tool is like having a surgical tool that you just wouldn't get any other way. So I'm gonna not send that back because I want to go back to Pro Tools. So this section here, but then we can actually just have those same modules. If I selected this section and I just wanted to take out the ticks, right? I can just pull down the audio suite version of that tool, RX12, D-click. And now when it comes up, oh, it's already open. So what I'm going to do is just kind of adjust a few settings. And you can save all these as presets as well. But I can process it this way. Or what I've previously done is I've actually just put it on a button. Beep. Oops. Didn't like that. Uh-oh. But what I can do is I can have all my presets on buttons. And then once I've done it, I usually color it so I know what. Oops. Let's do that again. I can color it so I know I've done something to it. So this is how we do the cleanup process on most old movies, right? When we have it. Now, what's been harder for us on this has been when we have a problem that, say, something like, big pops. You look at a big pop here, like here's some big pops. Yeah, they're pretty nasty. And, oh, did you hear that? There was a little bit of wow in there. We could send this off, this whole section off, right? We could send this over to RX editor. You can see the pops, and they look pretty obviously. And you can just go through, and we could just remove them one at a time by hand, just affecting just the frequency range we want, right? And then sometimes it's better to actually run the spectral repair and just clean these off horizontally at this kind of number, and boom, we're done. Okay, so we can, now the trick is with a lot of this stuff is when you look at these ticks that you can see here, right? You can take the ticks out, but sometimes you have to be very content aware of what this is. What is this, right? Because the problem is there's not much difference between a pop tick or a footstep or maybe a horse trot, right? So you have to be very kind of content aware when you're looking at these things and know that, like, okay, well, there's somebody walking, this is probably a footstep, right? I don't want to over clean it. I don't take out the Foley, right? So I would detick this first or clean it, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, I would probably now open up the wow tool, and where's the wow tool? Wow and flutter. And I would take the wow out of it. And it's going to process it, and it's done. Might be still wowing a little bit, but let's speed it up. So we're looking at all these different tools. The problem that became, needs a little bit more work, but we'll put it away. So we can clean out all these nice big ticks, put them all back, render them back in, change the color so we know we did something to it, maybe put some crossfades on it, right? Otherwise, you just have a whole lot of edits like, what the hell did I do? So I color code them. But then we want to look at some other, like here's a tick, right? Nice little pop. We just probably want to, let me see if this will work this time. Nope. New code. So by the way, this is SoundFlow. This is what it looks like. This is what these buttons look like. Each one of these is a custom panel. So this one is my main panel that I'm using right now that has all my little smart tools. I can switch the smart tools and Pro Tools. I have my presets for D-click. I can send to the RX pretty fast. So this whole process speeds up the time you're spending in doing all these repairs. It's just the more we can automate it, the faster we can do it. The problem is you can't, like I said, you cannot like detick the whole thing because detick is a bit abusive in that even if you set it at a light or medium, if it's going to detick everything. It's going to take out all your footsteps. It's going to take off all the tops of your P's and T's. All of a sudden they'll start sounding like they're talking like this. So you have to be very careful how you use these tools. It takes a little bit of learned skill to process them. But what I'm going to do on this one here, I'm just going to take this tick out, right? And this is the vast majority of how this work gets done, right? Let's make that one red. Now what I want to do is show you some of the new fun stuff. So one of the things we can do here is, this is like the dialogue's a little low right here, right? It's coming up.
I didn't want to startle you. I thought you might be asleep. What is it? Come quickly. Someone's prowling.
What I want to do is be able to raise that dialogue, but I still want to leave the effects and the BGs and everything at the current level, right? Otherwise you feel the swell, right? Which is like when we're dealing with a lot of old movies, that's how they would raise the dialogue. You would feel the production sound underneath the dialogue come up with it. So you have these swells. So one of the ways that we can fix this now is we have a tool that, well, we've had it for a little while, but we've just been recently redone, called Dialogue Isolate. And Dialogue Isolate, you get to control three separate things: the voice, the reverb, and the noise, okay? So, and you can open this up and even look, but further, you can open it up and just see even more quality settings. You can tweak the heck out of this. But for this particular one, I just want to raise the voice without affecting the reverb or the noise, right? And so we're just going to process this line. Hold on. Let's go way up. Now, this is not the only tool that we use in this kind of instance, right? So now we've now raised the dialogue.
I didn't want to startle you. I thought you might be asleep. What is it? Come quickly. Someone's prowling around.
And we've not affected the background or the noise floor overall, right? So this is real handy. Now, this also comes in handy if we say we want to de-reverb something. So let me find my little de-reverb section I was going to do here. So we have.
But down here, nothing has been added or taken away since Sir Hugo's time.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the most cheerful spot I've ever seen.
But what I want to do is I want to keep that dialogue, but I want to dry it up. So I'm going to drop this reverb all the way down, click on this file and render it out. And now we're going to keep the dialogue the same, but the reverb is going to be mostly.
Did some modernizing upstairs, but down here, nothing has been added or taken away since Sir Hugo's time.
Well,
just to recap what that used to
But
sound
down
like.
here, nothing has been added or taken away since Sir Hugo's time.
It's probably kind of hard to tell in this room because but it removed a good chunk of the reverb, and I'll do it even more, just take it all the way out.
Some modernizing upstairs, but down here, nothing has been added or taken away since Sir Hugo's time.
So it does a nice job of just removing the reverb, leaving the dialogue where it was, leaving the noise floor where it was, right? Now, this tool is good, but there's other manufacturers that make things that are just as nice, and I'm going to show you another one. So this one is from a company called Supertone, and this is called Clear, and it does the same kind of thing, but the knobs are different, okay? But you can take something like this.
be careful, sir. These steps are a bit.
Okay, and you could dial the ambience right out of this, leave the voice and the reverb exactly where it's at.
Be careful, sir. These steps are a bit in need of repair.
Right? Now I want to kind of take you forward into some of the really fun stuff. So one of the things that we were able to do recently is, or one of the sort of holy grails of this, all this processing that we've been trying to do, is to get control over those three stems, those three layers again, right? And source separation has been something that's been happening. There's been a couple companies doing really well in this space for a few years. Audio Shake does a really good job of it. You can also feed the full dialogue, music, and effects into it and separate out your dialogue, music, effects. It is 85 to 95% effective. The problem is it depends on the quality of the source material, right? So if you have an old movie that's kind of limited bandpass limited, and there's just not a lot of really good clarity to it, it's going to be a little harder to separate. Also, the separation algorithms are going to start to they're going to start to lose their ability to separate on certain scenarios. Like you have a loud scene where there's fighting and yelling and music blaring and car crashes all at once. It sometimes gets a little confused. So you'll want to kind of You may have to clean some of it by hand. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this over to the editor, right? And here we have it.
I might add that for some time, Sir Charles was in a highly nervous state, worried. Something was preying on his mind.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool here called Scene Rebalance. And Scene Rebalance can do a couple of fun things. So you have your 3 layers, dialogue, music, and effects. Let's say I just wanted to process this whole thing or a section of it and just take out just the music, right? So I'm going to mute the music and I'm just going to render it, right? And so I'm going to get this thing back. I'm running on Intel chips, sorry, it's a little slow. It does really well on the M4s though, on the Apple chips. And what's really kind of interesting is all this is running on a Mac Mini, right? You don't need a big, supercomputer with a lot of processing. You get, in this section here, you can, mostly eliminated the music. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing, this whole piece, and I'm going to stem split it. And what I'm asking it to do is now split it into 3 layers, dialogue, music, and effects, right? So it's going to take probably about 30 more seconds, but it's going to give me the 3 layers, and I can process those layers separately, right? So we'll have a quick look at that. And this, by the way, this is just released yesterday. This is brand new release, RX12. So this is traditionally something that was near impossible to do about 5 years ago. We got a little better the last few years, and then about 2 years ago, Audio Shake and some others started coming in with it. But this one is actually bundled into RX. And by the way, there are other softwares besides RX. There's spectral layers. So there's other companies doing the same sort of thing. It's just what flavor you like. So now we're going to have a listen to what we just heard, but
Dr. Mortimer,
just the voice.
to what do you attribute the death of Sir Charles?
Okay. Here is just the music. This was all out of a piece of a composite mix, okay? And here is the effects. Now here's the really good part about that. All the ticks and pops ended up in the effects layer. So you just have to detick that. Right?
The state.
Yeah, so we do have a little bit of bleed through there
The state.
in the effects track, but copy it, paste it up on the upper stem, you're done, right? So this type of work was near impossible till just recently, right? And now we can literally go through and remix the movie, right? I can go through and take an entire reel of a film, separate it out, put it on stems, put it back up on the console, and rebalance the mix, right? Or remove something. Common problem that we're always asked to do is we're asked constantly to remove all the music from a series of a television series because they want to replace it for foreign distribution or something like that. So strip all the music out, we're going to replace it with new library music. So we go through that. Or, oh, we just need the dialogue from this foreign mix. Can you just separate out all the foreign dialogue on this A title from 40 years ago, in French? And so we can now do that. The problem at this point isn't that we can't do it. It's going to be probably another year or so before it gets better because these are all learning algorithms. And over time, as they're able to ethically source content to train the AI engine to do it, this will improve over time. But right now, it's pretty good. Anybody have questions? No? Yes. Question? No?
I kind of have 2 questions.
Sure.
Ethically sourced. So if I'm working on this, not that I do, but if I'm working on this, does that become source content for your?
No.
Okay. And
this operates standalone. So this is part of the problem with some of the other services and softwares was the ability to, you had to send them your content, right? And they would process it on their servers and send it back to you. That's the kind of the model of some of those companies. Now we have it, we can just do it ourselves, and we can stay within our data island of our production network, on our facility. We don't have to go outside to do it. and this is not sent back to them. So when I say ethically sourced, right now you can get lots of public domain movies to work this on, but then there were a lot of people who are stepping up and offering up movies to test this on or train this on, or independent movies where the owners of the content are okay with doing it. So
The other question I have is just semi-personal. I've been finding like old songs and music from, the 60s, 70s, whatever. And I've been like going to YouTube, it's like, oh, isolated track bass.
Right.
Has this been used on that kind of thing? So
Yes,
like,
there's actually a tool for that. There's a music rebalance tool in here as well, which is also another thing. Where is it? So music rebalance, very similar. Voice, bass, drums, other. And there's other services that you can upload to, like, and just send, like you see all these, like all the kids are doing it these days. They're just taking a song from the 80s and they're, breaking it back down. Like, hey, here's what happens if I take the synth out, or here's, And I have a friend whose kid is a drummer, and so he's taking these songs, he's removing the drums and giving it to his son to play against on his drum kit. Why he gave his kid drums, I'll never know, but yeah, it's not my choice. Anyway, any other questions? Great, because there'll be a test later. I just thought you guys wanted. Anyway, so we now have stem separation. It's new. It's pretty wow. And so the process of fixing these movies, although we can do a lot of things, there's the sort of also the thing, well, how much do we do, right? How far do we go with it? Because we could turn this into an Atmos in a heartbeat. But we're dealing, so there's some other tools I want to kind of run through you. I want to start to also have a little look at, let's see here. Let's have a look at one of the other tools I like.
Oh, no, sir,
So if you get, we now have tools. One of them is made by a company called Ascentize. And what Ascentize has done is they've kind of reinvented voice resynthesis. So we can resynthesize a piece of dialogue and clean it up. Right now, Studio 3, this will practically turn it into ADR. So let's listen to it first. Let's just pick a piece here.
Holmes, while you were out, a gentleman called to see you and left this.
I can turn this into what is practically ADR.
Holmes, while you were out, a gentleman called to see you and left this.
He asked you to give it to me?
Oh, no, sir, he just left it.
Now that's that algorithm. There's a whole bunch of other algorithms here. I like natural too, if I'm dealing with old content, right? But where this gets really wild, right, is I can take this piece of thing, I can send it into our RX editor, and from within the RX editor, you're gonna love this, you can open up that plugin. So you can go and open up plugins inside of the plugins. Let me just see if I have it. No, it's not loaded. But you can open up the plugin from within and process it separately, which comes in handy if you had to like resynthesize a piece of dialogue where you're missing the top end, right? You're missing, it's muffled, the mic is down in the shirt, and you're like, oh, that's just what they went with in 1965, right? So we can now bring the high end back in, right? Which is kind of handy with some of these tools. Like if you had something and you needed to extend it up, you can now resynthesize it. Any other questions? No? Okay. So we have all these new tools, right? And now what we can do is, like, we can actually go through and remix this movie by going through and rebalancing things as we go, right? We can say, well, in this section
in this
here,
world?
What?
My conjecture is that he'll be murdered.
Murdered?
It'll be very interesting to see if my deductions...
Okay, so we have this bell ringing, right? What we probably want to do is let's send it.
My conjecture is that he'll be murdered.
It's going to probably come across as music. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the bell out. See how we do. Now, all that I'm showing you in the editor, most of these plugins will also work in real time on the timeline. It has to, but I wouldn't do it unless you had like really strong processors, you know. And if they, and okay, no, it didn't take it out, sorry. But we can do things. One of my favorite things is we have this noise floor in here.
Murdered? It'll be very
We
interesting.
have a lot of clicks and pops we want to take out, and some other noises we want to clean up.
It'll be very...
And then we also want to go through and let's just say we wanted to pull this whole noise floor
Murdered?
down overall. Let me see how this works on this one. So one of the things that we're able to do now is, as we go through a lot of these old movies, we find that the levels were all over the place. When it was shown in a theater back in the 40s or whatever it was, you'll find that the dialogue levels are up and down and up and down, and a lot of that got sort of absorbed in the theater, right? So the dynamic range wasn't as critical as it is today when you're listening to it on a flat screen, which is speakers are pointing backwards at the wall, bouncing off the wall, and you can't understand the dialogue, and nobody doesn't realize it's the speakers and the TV. But that's a whole separate subject. So what I've done here is I've lowered.
What?
My conjecture is that he'll be murdered.
Murdered?
It'll be very interesting to see if my deductions are accurate.
So when we get into scenes where they're driving in a car, you know, say in a movie in the 40s, you know, and it wasn't a process shot, they're actually out on the road and they're trying to have a conversation, and the road noise is so big and the car noise is so big, I can actually just go in for that entire scene and lower that entire background noise to make the dialogue pop back out so you can hear it. So it sounds good when it's bouncing off the back wall behind your TV to your speakers in your ears, right? Am I the only one that noticed that the speakers are the problem?
We used to have the same thing when NBC went stereo.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Murdered?
So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. They wanted me to do 45 minutes, but I think I wanted to open up for questions and have kind of a general discussion about it. What do you think? Anybody got any questions? I know you do.
Audio
Yeah.
restoration. Yep, here we go. Glenn.
So almost everything I watch at my house, with the speakers bouncing off the back wall, very, very important. I do have surround sound Denons in all my rooms that my wife hates, so we turn that off so she can just watch the TV. Modern day mixers have this bad habit of doing music, effects, and dialogue.
Okay.
Can you talk to all of them about, I want to hear the fucking story and I like your music and effects, but I want to hear what they got to say?
So I agree with you. There has been a push in the last 4 or 5 years to address this issue. And out of that came these tools, right? Was like, well, how do we clean up the dialogue? So there's a couple of problems. If you go back to 20 years ago when you were making television shows, generally you're shooting a sitcom on a sound stage. You had 2 really nice booms with 2 guys that really knew how to follow and track, right? All that, wires were not a thing, okay? Then when you went outdoors, okay, you were doing location stuff, you used some wires, but you tried to stay with the boom whenever you were on your medium shots and your 2 shots. The picture department, not casting blame, but the picture, you know, the camera department generally now tries to override the boom and have it pushed out of the set, right? Take that boom and get it out of here. Rely on the wires. So here's the overall physics problem. The boom is about the size of a nickel, right? That pickup is pretty big, and it's focused and it's really good. this little microphone usually stuck in their shirt somewhere. Sometimes it's buried in the shirt, but it's a really tiny pickup, right? So we run into so the problem is more and more in recent years, the producers and that whole post-production process has relied more on the wires than on the boom, okay? And so we've gotten away from using the best mic on the set to using the worst mic on the set. We've changed, right? That's the biggest problem. But now what we've been able to do in dialogue editing and cleanup is we can take both mics and we can time align them, because the problem is this microphone on your shirt is pointing up and the one up there is pointing down, when actually when they hit, they're out of phase. You flip the phase on one. So we have a software now that just does it automatically. You say, here's your guide, like use the wire as the guide, here's the boom, phase correct and time align this channel to this channel, right? Auto align post. It's a great tool. Problem is it takes some skill to use it, and that's in short supply. But we're able to do that. But then so we're running three problems, right? We're running bad choice of miking, right? Followed through into post, cutting back the budgets on post, so not giving the dialogue editors time to cut and clean it, just throwing up the wires and running with it, or throwing up, not even that, throwing up the production mix. So the problem with the production mix that's coming off the set is the production sound mixer is mixing the boom to the wire, so it's out of time and out of phase. This thing's 5 feet away, this thing's 5 inches away from your mouth. So they're arriving, when you combine them, and making a production mix on set, there's a slight combing that goes on if no one notices. That gets worse as you get into post-production. When you're hearing it on a little set of speakers in your edit bay, your picture editor is cutting, he gets used to it, but doesn't really think it's a problem. But by the time you start mixing that, you realize you're missing all the clarity. So the fix is to time align those microphones. But it takes some skill, and it takes a little bit of time to get it done right on a dub stage. Modern post budgets don't allow as much time as they used to for good dialogue mixing, right? It's run and gun, right? You're just trying to get that dialogue together as quick as possible. But if you let the dialogue editor do his job or her job and get that time alignment correct, hand it off to the stage, and also adjust it a little bit so the levels, so it just kind of goes up and it plays, right? And then the gaffing mixer who's mixing the dialogue and the music has a better opportunity to balance the dialogue against the music, and let the effects guy just overdo it. And, he'll go over there and pull his faders down all the time. But that's the kind of stuff that we're wrestling with in modern post-production sound mixing, whether it's feature film or episodic TV. That's one of the main issues, right? And then you get to the playback problem for the consumers. So, and the way that the best way that I know that I discovered how good the mixes were and how bad the playback systems were is I started listening to a lot of Atmos mixes at home. I have a nice Atmos system, but you put on your Dolby headphones, you can hear all the dialogue, everything's crystal clear, the mix sounds great. But if you listen to that mix through your pair of TV speakers, bouncing off the back wall to a room that's, it's not going to play. So the first cure, I think, is everybody needs to buy a sound bar, right? Put some better speakers on that flat screen, And I can tell you this after talking to the people at I won't say Samsung, but Samsung. They spend more money on the box they ship that TV in than they do on the speakers inside that TV.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, they all do it, by the way. So you end up with this, run and gun mixing technique, not enough time to process the tracks correctly. Now, but when you get into like the A titles and the bigger movies, and they people have better budgets to do post, it's so funny because the sound for a movie is half the finished product, but it is 2% of the budget in post, And so we end up, with an imbalance. But it's funny, I've done whole lectures on this whole topic, on just dialogue clarity. And now you add in these kind of tools and we can get it there. The interesting part now is applying these tools to older movies to sort of like, okay, now we're going to pull this dialogue out a little bit, right? We're going to lower this noise floor. We're going to clean up these pops and ticks, and we're going to restore it to as people remember it. You know, that's the whole like methodology we're going with. And it's all the old content, it has a lot of value, right? People don't realize how much other people like to watch older movies. They're reissuing, you know, A titles from 20 years ago, and they're selling a lot of tickets, you know? And you just go back and you clean this stuff up, and it's gold. And that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Doug. Great talk, and appreciate you. Next meeting is going to be May the 21st. So come join us for that one. That will be post up, and it's about AI and the post-production work chain. So,
Okay.
all right. And George will be announcing his acceptance speech. We want George. All right. Thanks, everyone. Yep.
Here for about 15 minutes.